Hi everybody, my name is Teresa and I am a very grateful member of Al-Anon family groups, which is worldwide, and it does include Alateen. I want to thank Angel and Congo Joe, who asked my husband, who got me to be part of this as well, and also for making me come down here instead of being on the podium so I can hold this and try to see my notes. All right, I did take a few notes because a lot of things he said I was going to say, so I crossed a few things out. I'm not sure how much time I have, but we'll see. All right, a little bit of comeback. I married Mr. Wright, but I didn't know his first name was Rarely. And honey, when we get home, I will set up a bed for you in the kitchen, and you will make your own breakfast. In all sincerity, all right, we have a good relationship. I got a Lexus for my husband. It was a good trade. All right, he helped me with some of this, so. All right, that's about as good at the jokes as I get. A little bit about me and where I came from originally. I was not born in an alcoholic family, but my parents came with a lot of scars. They were both Holocaust survivors, and although they raised my sisters and I in a very sheltered environment, things were different. Emotions weren't shared. My father especially was incredibly shut down. And I think my mother, I don't know if her parents drank. She was separated from them very young because of the war. But she was an Al-Anon without a program. I learned a lot of my fixing and interfering skills from her with the best of intent, because she loved fiercely. My older sisters ignored me. They used to have this word PIT, and it stood for Project Ignore Teresa. So I was really lonely. You know, I was a lonely child. I felt not listened to, not paid attention to. I played alone. I had a very rich imagination. But I think I grew up often sad. When I started high school, I was only 4'10", and everything that matched it. So I felt really different. That was another thing. Puberty is not fun. I didn't start dating until the end of high school, but I was very closed off. I had learned how to close my heart from my father, and I never let anyone in. So I met him in college. I was 21 and he was 23. He had kind eyes and a warm laugh, and I had no idea that he had a drinking problem. I had actually been a little sister in a fraternity for a period of time, and I stopped because they drank too much and they were just acting stupid. They really weren't very good at drinking. So I didn't know. You know, he had a wooden leg that I knew nothing about. When we first met, actually, he wanted me to say this, he thought I was stuck up. I gave him stink eye the first time. But we started hanging out together as a group. I have to put this down and try to change my page. Too many notes, a lot of it crossed out. We'd go out, you know, on the weekends in college, because drinking was normal. And again, this guy seemed to handle his liquor really well. I didn't know until many years later that he had tried AA. I also didn't know he was a daily drinker. The night we first connected, we went to a toga party. It was my first and last. And my roommate got ridiculously drunk. She'd broken up with her boyfriend. And being the gentleman that he was even then, he carried her home. I followed. We parked her in my bathroom downstairs. And while she was throwing up, driving the porcelain bus, we sat and talked, and I think I made you cocoa. Oh, but before that happened, I went upstairs to turn her bed down and found her boyfriend passed out on the bed. I saw his stomach writhing and went downstairs to let Mike know, and he went and helped him in the bathroom upstairs. So then, while that was happening, we talked, and towards the end of whatever the time was, I walked him to the door. He said I gave him kiss me eyes. I did not, but we had our first kiss, and it was okay. Later on, he didn't come over, and I wondered, does he like me? Was the kiss not that okay for him? So the next party, and I wasn't a big partier, by the way. We get things, right? Nurture nature. I'm not that tall. I don't happen to be an alcoholic. But it was a progressive party. And I guess I'd had a little liquid courage, and I went over and talked to you. We went for a walk, probably had another kiss, and then you asked me out. And he is my first love, and I married my first love. But this is where my disease of Al-Anon started. Because once I gave him my heart, there was no turning back. You know, we have a phrase in Al-Anon, detachment. There's a wonderful piece of literature on it. There was no way I knew anything about that word. I had to help him. And like I said, I thought he was a periodic drinker because he drank daily to function, and then, as he said, had blackouts. I didn't see the pattern until he mentioned the couch surfing. What he didn't mention, two things. One, the couch killer. Well, what I remember about that time is the smell of his perspiration. It smelled like paste from preschool, like exactly the same. And the other is that this couch surfing, he moved in with me without our discussing it. And already being wired to need Al-Anon, I let him. I was a pretty good enabler, but I loved him. So when we were living together, unplanned, that's when I saw more of a pattern. I was with him a total of about 2 years. And I saw, he would promise me he'd stop drinking, we'd have conversations, and I don't believe you lied to me. I believe you wanted to stop, you just couldn't. So there were commercials on at that time, and it had a phone number. I called it. Well, when they heard it wasn't me, we weren't married, and he didn't have insurance, they told me to look up in the phone book, the white pages, and call Alcoholics Anonymous, which I did. And of course, what did they do? They referred me to Al-Anon. Al-Anon family groups. I had no idea, of course, what it was. And you know, Al-Anon is going to be 75 years old this year, and there are still too many people who don't know what Al-Anon family groups are. I went to my first meeting with a notebook. They obviously guided me to a meeting close to my house, and I sat in the front, and I had my pen and notebook, because I figured this was how to get him sober, like a lot of people go to Al-Anon for that reason. Because what was my problem? Well, his drinking was. My first meeting, I was so full of hope. And although I felt safe, because I was ashamed that I left an alcoholic. I really was. I knew my family and friends would tell me to leave him. I didn't hear what I wanted, but I heard something, and I think I shared earlier today, I asked at the end of that meeting, what is this God thing? Because I wasn't raised with any religion, I found it unbelievably uncomfortable. I went home a little not so thrilled, but of course he went off and drank again, and I went back to my second meeting, and I've been going back ever since. And that second meeting, I was hurting. I crawled in, and I went with a friend, actually, that I'd confided in. And instead of leaning forward, I crouched back, right? I was full of sadness and fear. But I knew from the beginning that Al-Anon was the right place for me. I say today, because although I've met many alcoholics in my life through the years, I believe you were my first, and you gave me the keys to come into Al-Anon and find a new way of living. So just going back a little bit with our story, and he said a lot of it. Let's see. Okay, I think I already covered all of that. Oh, okay, I have to say this. He said my parents wanted a Jewish doctor or attorney. Instead, they got a Catholic lifeguard. And what's so funny is our memory, right? Because I've got to clean up. Some of his memories are, we'll just say, different than mine. He says that he told me he was an alcoholic. He did not. He said he wasn't good enough for me. And I didn't agree. Okay. So I'm going to Al-Anon, and I got a sponsor. And she was wonderful. And I have to say, those first people in that home group, that was my home group for many years, I used that phone list a lot. And I still remember a lot of the ladies' names. There was one lady named Joy. I wanted somebody to fix him, right? That's all I wanted. So simple. And with my first sponsor, I started working the steps. And I think that's when my fear truly started. I was scared of looking at myself. I was the problem. I didn't understand that. You know, I was a young woman, I won't tell you how old, and I thought I knew a lot. And I'll compare that to today. I knew a lot more then than I know now. The longer I'm around, especially in these rooms, the less I know. But she was gentle with me, and we went through the first 3 steps probably too quickly, because when I started my inventory, it didn't work. It didn't work. I used the other book, and what did I do? I just wrote poorly about myself. I had such resentments against all my character defects that I didn't even know what they were. So we went back. We went back to those first 3 steps again. And I created my own God of my own understanding. And then I did my inventory. One of our books is Blueprint for Progress, and they still have it. It's the small little one. But it was amazing. We met several times, and there were so many special things she did. We read to each other every morning. I'm not even sure Courage to Change was out yet, but it might have been. And we turned something over to God every morning. And every morning I was scared. And I have to say, when I walked into meetings, my heart would pound. It was how I knew how I was feeling. When I'd share, I had the hee-hees real bad. I didn't notice that I had the hee-hees. And what's interesting, 2 things. One is nobody stopped me, nobody corrected me. But even today, it's hard to talk about him. I rarely do in meetings. It's about me. It's about what's going on in my life. All right, so we talked about getting married, and I did want to say this. So, okay, 7 months, 3 weeks. But I was 5 days short of a year in Al-Anon. I truly didn't think that he would not stay sober. And by the grace of whatever miracle God gave, he did. But I wouldn't recommend it. 2 ding-a-lings don't make a bell. You know, he had a pink cloud for a couple of years. I remember him expressing regrets that we were married. And what kept us going was we went to meetings. There were a lot of meetings where there was AA in one room, and then the smaller room was Al-Anon. We'd go out afterwards, sometimes with other couples. It was a date night. It was amazing. We'd also go to open AA meetings, and they were usually huge, and speaker meetings, and amazingly fulfilling. You know, when the clapping tonight, you know, the countdown reminded me, because I would do all those things with him. How our programs work. It's not a contest. It was in the beginning. I have a competitive nature that I never knew I had. And I'm not very athletic. And I'm a little shorter than him. But finding that higher power, like I said, was harder for me. You know, my connection with my higher power is different. Every morning, I say, "Good morning, God," instead of saying, "What? Good God, it's morning." I remember to do that. And if I don't before I get out of bed, I do afterward. We used to do a lot of spiritual readings together. I can't get spiritual till I've had coffee. But we have that quiet time in the morning that's really, really special to us. Another thing I want to share is my relationship with my higher power. Thank you. Today it's God. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's higher power. I said this earlier. Sometimes it's HP. It's just what gets stuck up here is the problem for me. My higher power speaks to me so quietly. I just have to remember to listen. So for me, it's a daily choice. Every day, I have to remember to turn my will and my life over, because I forget sometimes. I don't get into big trouble, but I get into little trouble, because my perspective is not what my higher power has in store for me. My journey in Al-Anon has taken a lot of different paths. Turn my page again. I'm sorry, if it was the podium, it would be easier. Talked about our children, and I do want to talk about that a bit, because this is something that I've only done with my sponsor and maybe in a few small meetings. So our kids don't have the disease of alcoholism today. But they have other things that we gave them, right? Nature versus nurture. They both suffer from depression and anxiety. And it's not funny, but we've said, you know, what did our genetics do? You can't give everything to your kids, right? They get what they get. When our son was 13, I saw he had something going on. Puberty, what was happening. And ultimately, he ended up making some smaller attempts at suicide, but we took them very seriously. And even though I saw some changes, and we went to the doctor, found a therapist, you can't stop a runaway train. So with these attempts and the way he was really good at digging down instead of reaching out, he ended up being hospitalized in a psychiatric unit for adolescents for 4 months. And it was awful. It was awful for him, and it was awful for us. He closed the door on us, he blamed us. And the most miraculous thing about all that, as painful as it was we each had our programs, we each had each other, and we took it a day at a time. We cried a lot, we were there a lot for each other. And after a lot of struggle, he did get better. He ultimately went back to school. Things were a little different, right? He did it differently, and we accepted that. We learned about acceptance in the rooms of Al-Anon. That's what we focus more on than anything. He was doing great, right? Our daughter also had some struggles. We dealt with it differently. I took her to a therapist on her own, and I wasn't a part of it. She was 17, almost 18. But they were doing well, and life was good. You know, through this, I had aging parents. Al-Anon came into play for me. I always used the tools of Al-Anon with every phase of my life. And if any of you don't, I've tried it without. The tools work for everything. These are tools for living. When our son was 20, things happened. It doesn't even matter the specifics, but he went into another depression. He ended up coming home. It was the same thing. Saw all the signs. He stopped bathing. He stopped shaving. He wouldn't talk to us. I reached out to his old psychiatrist. You know, I did these things to try to help him. And every day we'd check on him. And it was really scary. He didn't leave the house for, I don't know, it was about 2 months. And then one morning, it was my husband's turn. I was glad it was you. He found him. He was alive. But he had overdosed on a little pink pill, a lot of them, that was mentioned earlier. And he screamed for me to call 911. And it was like it was worse, obviously, than when he was 13, although we'd had some of the experiences to learn some tools, right? Some tools for living, even through something like this. And the weirdest thing I thought of it this morning is when the paramedics came and took him out to go to the hospital, I thought, he's going outside, he's getting fresh air. That's what I thought was the worst thing. So when he was in the hospital, he had something called rhabdomyolysis. I can't remember how to pronounce it now. He ended up getting, it's like a compression syndrome, and we had no idea what that meant. He had, I think he had bladder problems, liver problems. Initially, all of his, a lot of his tests were bad, hard initially, but everything corrected except for one thing. He got something called complex regional pain syndrome. He had passed out in one position. That's the compartment syndrome. And so in the hospital, when we were focused on his depression and his suicide attempt, and he was actually really happy to be alive, right? He got that euphoria of being okay, although he was hallucinating. Remember that? For several days from these little funny pink pills that you could get in quantity at Costco. When he first got up, he had a catheter, and they took it out for him to go to the bathroom. He got up, and I think he kind of I don't think he fell, but he collapsed back into the bed. Something was wrong with his left leg, his foot. And after different tests, no, he didn't break anything. He couldn't walk. He couldn't put any weight on it. And he was actually put on medication that was for that, but he ended up going home. He couldn't get into a treatment, psychiatric unit, and he came home, and then it got worse, and we ended up getting sent to a pain doctor. The pain doctor put him on all kinds of things to try to handle this pain, and the miracle was that he's not an addict. He got addicted physically, though. He definitely did. He was on, I don't know if I need to tell you this, but since it's not official AA, Al-Anon, he was on morphine pills every 4 hours, right? Might have even been 3 at one point. Fentanyl patch, all kinds of pain medication that didn't even help him. And I was horrified. I remember every time I gave him his medication, I said, his father is an alcoholic. We're really scared. But it was short term. And going through that, and him being resistant to getting treatment, getting help, he definitely suffered from the different than. And there were times in the first months, and I'm going off my own little notes here, that we would mention, we wished he was an alcoholic. And he didn't understand what that meant. But it's because he could find a fellowship, right? He was alone, nobody knew what it was like. And the things I remember, besides crying constantly, or a lot, it felt like there was this huge, huge dark cloud over our house, is meetings, program. And that's when, and I thought I'd cry more, but I guess I'm not. We let him be. We had to bring him his food. I don't even know how long it was. The first year, the first 2 years, he barely moved. And first he had a walker and he couldn't even use the walker, and we got him special crutches, and nothing helped. Nothing helped. It's a very difficult thing to treat. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but there is no cure. So during this time, I needed to do something different. So all the years I've been in Al-Anon, I've been in service at the grip level, and there is nothing wrong with that. Every piece of service is important. Setting up chairs, making coffee if they make them in meetings, being a greeter, they're all important. But I just decided to dive deeper. And I might have already become a group representative. I don't remember if it was during that time or just before. But I kept going. And I didn't keep going because I wanted to. I kept going because I heard there was a need. And I couldn't help my son. We couldn't help him. But I could do it for others. So I won't bore you with all the details of service other than I never wanted to do any of it. I never aspired to do any of it. But I was willing. I was willing to do something different. One of our older booklets is called When I Got Busy, I Got Better. I'm a little too busy, but I take it a day at a time. And, going back to the memories of fear, I can't remember the last time I was truly afraid, because I do have a higher power that walks with me. Mike talked about how I can't do it because I don't have hands, tosses problems up to God. I do it a little differently. One time I was doing meditation and struggling, and I put my hands, I cupped them, and I felt God coming in. And I still do that today when I say the serenity prayer. When I meditate, it really helps me, it just connects me to my higher power. It lets my higher power in, because again, I have to remember. I have to share something funny. I think it's funny. A lot of people make a God box, right? I've had a God box for many years. Well, I'd stopped using it for a long time because I would turn it over in prayer or write about it. But when I started doing service at a certain level, I pulled that box out and it gets some action. And that's okay, because being in recovery, especially being in service, doesn't mean we don't still have our character defects. I know I still have some, plenty. A wise person told me, at least for most of us, character defects get dialed down, and they can come back, right? We have to continue working the program. I feel mine, right? I even tried alcohol at one point when you broke up with me, and it didn't work. I hated how it felt, and it didn't make anything go away. I just didn't have that. So getting into service, working with others, I've had several sponsors through the years, moving, outgrowing them, maybe stopping, going to meetings. My sponsor today is also my service sponsor. She is not perfect, but I learn from her every day. I get to work with others too, and that's where I get the most, oh my gosh, do I learn a lot from others. It's amazing. Don't be afraid. You get to work together with somebody. At least in Al-Anon, we're not teachers, right? We get to walk through things together. And here's another one. I was talking with these two lovely ladies before things started. We have traditions, and we have concepts. And the concepts include the warranties. And I used to think, boring, snore fest. Yeah. I used to also think the service manual was boring, and I would even say so. If you want help falling asleep, we have a pretty thick service manual. I think I have a digital copy of AA's. It's much thinner. We go into way too much detail. I love our service manual. It's not the business side of Al-Anon. You know, we have amazing literature in Al-Anon. Mine was real pristine for a long time. It's got a good patina on it now. You know, and I pull out old literature that I haven't used in a while. We have a lot of literature. I mean, AA does too, but I get to do something every day, right? Including being here. And I was not looking forward to this initially, because I've got a lot going on in other service, and yet I needed this, and I needed all of you. Let me see. All right, going back to our son, and I am jumping around because I really can't look at this. And I forgot to put my glasses on. No wonder I'm squinting. He's still living with us. It's been, you know what's interesting? His major suicide attempt was at the end of January, and I think it was 11 years ago. I'm not even positive anymore. He was 20, and he's 31, okay. I would remember it for several years, right? Relive the pain, relive all the memory. Forgot this year, completely forgot. I think today I remembered. He's at home with us still, like I said. He's doing better. He's doing it his way. And if I didn't have Al-Anon to fully accept him where he is, it's not what I wanted. And we want our kids to be happy. I wanted to give all our kids, all the good parts of us. But I am grateful for him. I fully accept him, as well as our daughter, who's home because he can't walk the dog. So she's there. She just got married, as we said, and that was a beautiful thing. It's a journey, isn't it? All of it is a journey, and I have so much more growing to do. You know, the position I'm in now, you know, whoop-de-doo. I didn't want it. I was willing, and I get to walk through it. And all I can tell you, the biggest gift I've gotten from service is it is a worldwide fellowship. I've really learned that the meetings I used to go to, and by the way, I do have 2 home groups, I didn't mention that. I don't need to say the names. I can though. I see how important it is. We're all different, right? We all have different backgrounds, how we're raised, what we look like, our age, you know, what we do for a living. We leave it all at the door. We can take it back up when we go. And I'm remembering that when I look around the rooms and I see the beauty in every one of you, I know I'm connected to my higher power. I don't need to look at the differences. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just the importance of that connectiveness. It blows me away. It blows me away. My parents never knew that Mike was a recovering alcoholic. They knew he didn't drink. It was his decision not to share it, mainly because he thought my father he had enough strikes against him. Although my father loved him dearly, he really did. I told my mom on her deathbed. I don't know, she did hear me. She heard me. And I remember her saying, she died of cancer, 22 years ago. Right, almost 22 years. My older sisters, they have different issues, right? Again, we all have issues. But my mother said, I must have done something right with you. Now, on her deathbed, I didn't tell her it was because of Al-Anon. I knew that. I knew Al-Anon gave me those tools for living that my parents just didn't know how to do. But it was a gift, right? It was all a gift. All right, I'm trying to think what else because I have to skip things, and I haven't had the same type of spiritual experiences as other people, including my husband. And that's okay. That's not competitive. The biggest one I had was when my mother passed. I felt God in the room, hugely. I knew when she was going to go. I was so grateful that I was with her. I had a feeling I wasn't supposed to watch. I was just supposed to lay down and hold her hand. And I did. And I will always be grateful for that, because she didn't believe in God, but I told her I believed for her. The other one was when my son was first home, when he was 20, and I don't even know if I told you this, honey. I might have. I was in a meeting, and I had gotten really, overly reconnected with my son, intuitively, as only, a mother, or a very close father can do. I knew when he needed something without him asking. And it didn't feel good, right? He was 20 years old, and I didn't want that. So that spiritual experience was, I felt like my umbilical cord had grown back, connecting me to him. And in that meeting, I was looking out the window, and I saw this beautiful tree with a beautiful sky. And I envisioned me disconnecting my umbilical cord side and giving it to God. And that's when things changed for me. Maybe that's when I got more involved in healthy service and working with others. I have to say today, my kids don't really understand what we do. We didn't give them the spiritual part of recovery. We can't go back. And that's okay, because even if we had, they have a choice every day that they get to make. I can't do for them, right? I accept them as adults. I accept their choices in life. I may not always, the acceptance doesn't mean approval. But I get to just live in the moment. And I'm jumping around a bit, but early in program I heard, a lot, I definitely was, if you have one foot in the past and one foot in the future, and I definitely did. You're standing cockeyed in the present. Today I'm in the present every single day, and I don't do it perfectly. I stress about what I need to do. I stress about others that I expect more from. I learned that too. Expectation's a dirty word, and it is. And I can't expect anything from anyone. I don't care if they're in program and if they've been in, 50 plus years. We're still human. We're gonna stay human. I love all aspects of both our programs. I'm so grateful. I think I'm gonna be even shorter than I thought. I'm gonna end with this. I think I'm gonna end. Okay. I gotta share this. When you were still drinking, I envisioned a candle in you. I truly did. And I tried to tell you about it. You were drunk, you probably don't remember. It doesn't take away from the candle to light another candle. It just lights the room more. Look how bright this room is. Thank you for lighting my candle tonight.